Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday, 7 o'clock. It's that time of the week again where you join us live on the Lincoln Property and Mortgage Show. As always, with me, Michael Hollenby, and also joined as ever by Jenny from Your Mortgage Hub. So, good evening. Let's jump straight in with the credits today, Jenny, and then we'll keep everybody waiting to find out what tonight's show's all about until they've seen the credits. So, let's hit those and we'll get started. So, Jenny, how's your week been?
Do you know, it's been, I thought, I've got not as many appointments as normal. It'd be nice and calm. It's a nice, easy week into the Easter. Yeah, I was led into a false sense of security, shall we say. It's been manic as always, which is good. That's good. But yeah, a lot busier than I thought. What about yourself, Mike?
Yeah, well, I knew you were going to say that because I spoke to you last Tuesday and Wednesday, and you said, "Oh, do you know, I've got a little bit of a clearer diary. I've been flat out, and I've got a bit of time to get a bit of headspace and on top of things." And I thought, I reckon I'm going to talk to you next week, and you'll have been flat out again. So, again, very, very busy week. I've got lots of exciting things going on, which over the coming weeks I'll be able to talk to everybody about. But I was just saying to you, the glasses are on tonight because it's been long, long days sitting in front of a laptop, 16-hour days at the minute. So, so very, very busy, but very exciting. There's a lot going on in the marketplace, as we've been talking about the last few weeks. I literally just sat in this seat 30 seconds before tonight's show because I've just got off the phone and booked 2 more valuations in, and I got an instruction on a fantastic property out in Ingham earlier today. So yeah, very, very busy. So lots and lots going on. But I say we just jumped in the hot seat just before we started. We've had some conversations and a little bit of sort of communication with us today just in regard to the subject, and I think you've come up with another cracker, which is what we wish we'd known as a first-time buyer. So tell us a little bit about how that sort of came about really for you, Jenny, and why have we got that topic tonight?
Yeah, I think 2024, I've said it all year, it's the first-time buyers are really going to sort of prop up the market for us this year, I think. And that's first-time buyers that have maybe never owned a property, as well as those ones that maybe fell off the mortgage ladder, and they're looking to get back onto that property ladder. So it's kind of across the two. It's a conversation I have a lot with clients about what, if I'd done it differently, the different position I would be in now to where I am in my mid-40s with the type of mortgage that I have. And I think having a little bit of insight to start with is really crucial because that can be a complete game changer, sort of as we move through your mortgage life, if you want.
Are you starting to get a lot more inquiries from first-time buyers? Obviously, last year, that market, to be fair, I mean, you'll know more than me, but in regard to what I was selling and the inquiries I was getting, first-time buyers, they just weren't there. Cost of living was a priority. They were just, there were so many other bills going on at that time. That market, I wouldn't say dried up completely, but there were nowhere near as many first-time buyers around. But if you have a look what I've registered in the last probably in the last 4 or 5 weeks, as well as obviously the last 2 to 3 months, I would definitely say first-time buyers are back. The last 3 properties I've sold have been to first-time buyers. So from my point, it's definitely picking up, and I'd imagine the numbers that you're seeing are greater. But what's your market like there with your inquiries?
Yeah, absolutely. It is completely right there, Mike. It is the first time buyers that are sort of propping up that market. As I say, last year we had a sort of a season, if you were, like, of first time buyers where they were selling and buying a lot of the landlord properties that were selling. Then the landlords come back on the market, and unfortunately that pushes out the first time buyers. But they are back, and they're back with a vengeance, and lenders are gearing their products, they're gearing their affordability and their rates, their deposit amounts towards the first time buyer market, because they know they're the ones that are really going to move this market forward. I say it all the time. No one moves unless a first time buyer buys. It's as simple as that. They are the bottom of the chain.
Exactly sums up. Definitely, that's exactly what happened. The cogs all came to a grinding halt last year because first-time buyers weren't buying. Investors were trying to sell and get rid of their investment portfolios because it got harder and harder to make money from an investment property, which had an effect with the property prices and all that sort of thing. So yeah, you're right. If the first time buyers are out there buying, the whole of the transaction, the cogs come to a grinding halt. So we wanted to talk to you tonight a little bit about our experiences as well. But again, if you want to get involved in tonight's show, please make sure you do so. You can send us a comment, send us a question, put your thoughts. It'd be good to get some of your sort of feedback, the funny stories and the your experiences of what it was like as a first-time buyer when you bought. And I think I'm going to sum up a little bit later on in regards to, I think, a process that we all think when we go in as a first-time buyer, which when we look back retrospectively over the years, we all think, what on earth was I worried about that for? Because in hindsight, which I think we'll all know what that topic's going to be. But yeah, get involved in tonight's show. I know we've got some people watching already. And again, if you like the comments or like some of the sort of content we're putting out tonight, just hit that like button for us. Again, it really makes a massive difference for us when we are obviously posting out on social media. Talking to social media, if you're not following us already, make sure you do so. And again, if you're watching the show back later on after the live show today, again, make sure you still get involved with us. If you send us any questions over, just drop your name in the comment box so we know who to talk to. So, Jenny, let's start with you. First time buyer into the marketplace, walking up and down Silver Street with a little bag, walking out with brochures with photographs stuck to the front of them, all in these little trays where you used to go in and help yourself and walk out with about 40 brochures. So what was it like? Well, that was what it's like for me. What was it like for you when you were looking around as a first time buyer?
Do you know what? I will never forget this because a little backstory. I got a knock at the door. I was 21 years old. I got a knock at the door, and it was my mum and my dad stood there going, I think it's about time you bought a house. And I was like, where has this come? Bearing in mind they lived 160 miles away. It was Sunday morning. I was hungover like you wouldn't believe, and there's this surprise knock at the door. So for me, it happened quite quickly. It was kind of a bit of a curveball. In those days, you could get 102% mortgages, which I did get because I had no money, no nothing. Yep. I sold my motorbike to pay for my stamp duty. Because every first time buyer those days had to pay stamp duty regardless of what you was buying. I think my first house was like 70,000, which wouldn't even get you a little flat anymore, would it? Let's be fair, 70 grand. And that was a 2-bed semi. So yeah, I will never forget that day and then being hungover and just in this utter shock that I was like in this position to be looking at house prices and houses, and I didn't even know where the estate agents were in my local area. So it was, and there was no internet to look it up within those days. It was just a case of, well, we'll just go to a high street and see what's on there. So yeah, it was really, really bizarre. But I think why I always say I was really pleased I got on the market at 21. I think, that's a massive thing. And for anyone who's 21 to get on the market at the moment is really, really hard and completely unusual in today's economy. I'd like to point that out. That is very unusual, but it's done me a massive favor. I just wish I'd planned it a bit better because it was very much I stumbled into it, shall we say.
Just scooting forward a little bit, how long were you in that property for?
For 3 years. 3 years I was in that property for, and then I fell off the property ladder.
Okay. The reason I asked is the average first time buyer stays in the property between 3 and 5 years. Life changes, all sorts of bits and pieces. Capital growth is often a big determining factor.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are bitten off more than they can chew with the mortgage, so they can sort of first see it through the first couple of years, or if equity's gone up, or life changes, or you need an extra bedroom, or you want a garden this time round, etc. So 3 to 5 years is the average time a first time buyer stays in the property. So another quick question for you: were you? Was that Lincoln area, or was that outside of Lincoln when you bought your?
It was out. Yeah, no, it was outside. It was up in Leeds, West Yorkshire. I did the typical thing. I'm 17. I know the world. I'm out of here, and moved to Leeds when I was 17 on my own. So yeah, I lived up there for 17 years. Believe it or not. Not that you could tell with this accent at all.
Well, the other that I was just looking at is that you mentioned a guy about where do you start looking for properties, and we joke there about there was no internet. Again, I've always lived in Lincoln. I've been in agency for 32 years this year, and I joked about having brochures with photographs stuck on the front. That was my first job, was to reorder reams and reams of photographs that were all sticky on a great big roll, and I used to sit there taking the photographs off the roll and sticking them on the front of brochures, etc. And anybody who was in Lincoln, and again, let's get some thumbs up on this, will remember the Thursday the Property Echo came out, and all the estate agents were marketing all their properties in there. It used to take us hours to put together those adverts. But that was the thing. People used to go either driving around looking for boards, or would wait for a Property Echo magazine to come out. That they would look at the details there, or go up and down Silver Street, as I say, looking at the agents. So things have really changed on there. So with the power of social media and marketing and portals and things now, websites, so much easier to find properties as a first-time buyer. So I think that's the first thing I would say is do your research. We talked last week even in regard to location and positioning and what's important for you. So we'll not cover that ground again tonight, but watch back on the last 2 week shows actually about how to prepare and look for properties and what's important for you and your wants and your needs. But I think ultimately the first thing as a first time buyer that I would say is be prepared, like you said, get organized, do your research, identify where you want to be and why you want to be there. Is it with friends, connectivity, community? Is it more to do with work? Are there plans for your work situation to change in the next 3 to 5 years? All these things, because you need to look at again your resaleability of that property. Zoopla and Rightmove and the portals can give loads of information about. We talk about capital growth. So if you put a property location in, it will tell you what the average price is now compared to years before. You can see which areas are popular. So I think it's that first step for me is find out why you're going to be buying your first property. Lots of different reasons there, and then just do a little bit of research. And that might lead on a little bit then, Jenny, in regard to what you think first time buyers need to do to get prepared for taking the plunge. You mentioned obviously 102% mortgages, no deposits, and the stamp duty. So total flip there. First time buyers now, stamp duty compared to sort of deposit. So even perhaps start there maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now stamp duty is for first time buyers, for the majority of first time buyers, a bit of a thing of the past. I think it's up to like 425,000. There's no stamp duty, and there are first time buyers that go as high as that, and if not higher. For the vast majority, that is one cost that you don't need to consider. But on the flip side, that cost may have gone. The deposits are there. Yes, there's a couple of lenders that are all offering the 0% deposits. They are incredibly hard to secure. Not impossible, but they are hard to secure, which means you might be saving in this area, but you definitely need to be looking towards your deposit. And it is very much a fine balance. And Mike, you'll see this from your side as well. Having the right amount of deposit against your future. So, there's lots of people that might come to me and they've saved vast amount, more than they needed to. But in that process, they've not been on the property ladder maybe for an extra 2 years. And that's 2 years that they could have paid off of their interest and off of their mortgage, or they paid someone else's pension, they paid their landlord's rent. But then on the flip side, we've also got the people that aren't saving enough. And it's a really, really awful conversation to have to a first-time buyer who's looked on all of the portals, is ready to, or what they feel is ready to move, to turn around and say they haven't got enough deposit. So I would say the first place that you should be looking before, as a first-time buyer, even if you're looking to move home, in all honesty, is your credit file, to understand what that is actually going to allow you to achieve. I got a really bad rate for my first home. Okay, it was diabolical. And that was because I had a CCJ that I didn't know about, didn't have a clue, because I was young and stupid and just thought I don't need to pay council tax. That's okay. So I got myself a nice little CCJ, and had no idea of anything to do with the credit file. So I would, had I not have done that, and had I actually saved some deposit, then I would be in a very different position now as I sit here today, because I wasted thousands of pounds on interest that I didn't need to pay. And I struggled, there were certain things I couldn't do as a 21-year-old because I had a mortgage. So yeah, definitely looking at that point from the very moment you decide that you're going to get a mortgage, whether that's a remortgage or your first home or anything like that. That's what I wish I'd done. That's the first thing I wish I'd looked at all those years ago.
I'm just going to pick up on there as well. There's two things. We've spoken over the last couple of weeks again about when you're putting offers in on properties and when you're looking or even registering with an agent. An agent is going to ask you, have you looked into your finances? Have you got an agreement in principle? Have you got a lender or an independent advisor that has given you some documentation to say that we've checked your affordability, checked your credit file, and you can borrow this amount of money? Because if you haven't, that's going to water down that eligibility to go and view properties, because an agent is going to be reluctant for you to go out and view properties at 250 grand, not knowing that actually you might only be able to afford 200. Okay, so very good point, Jenny. Get those finances looked into at the beginning. Find out what sort of deposit you need. As Jenny said there, the lower the deposit, the higher rate and the affordability is going to be with all the other criteria. So the more of a deposit you've got to go down. Set a realistic budget for yourselves. And then the other thing as well is just on budget is, you touched on it there a moment ago, Jenny, is look, you've got to still have a life when you've got a home. Okay, so yes, cost of living we've talked about, and you have to sacrifice those nights out, and you're more likely to get a bottle of wine from a supermarket than going down to a pub. Those sorts of things, there are sacrifices to be made. However, you still need to have a life when you're living in that home to make it a home. So I would always say is, there's elements and there's times where you might want to push yourself as high as you can go to get what you need, and there might be reasons behind that. But as a general rule, I'd always say just have a little bit of sensibility in there as well, is that sometimes as your first time, you don't always get what you want ideally, but you'll probably get what you need in order to have a good head start on the property ladder. I'm going to dive down a little bit of a rabbit hole here as well, Jenny, and sort of say that there's a lot of first-time buyers that I talk to that, if you're not buying with a partner, let's say, but you want to buy with maybe a friend. Have you got any sort of advice that you've got if people are buying as groups of people or friends buying rather than traditional first-time buyer on their own, or maybe a couple buying to get their first property together? Any little tips there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's happening more and more because people, like we've spoke about so many times, it's harder now to get on that property ladder than it has been for many, many years. So we are seeing friends that are doing it together to enable that they can get on. Now, it's important, this is vital, to set your boundaries and agree everything from the start, because, regardless of what anyone says, there will come a time where that is going to split. Whether that's a mutual decision, whether that's a falling out, a separation, whatever it is, there will come a time where most people or most friends will want to go off in one direction to another. And how does that look? So you can do a declaration of trust at that point, which basically will clearly outline exactly what that will look like. So it might be that, everything is split 50-50 and that's fine. But it might be that one of the people have put in a bit more of a deposit. And this goes for couples as well. I have this conversation a lot with couples. No one walks down the aisle, do they, Mike, thinking they're going to get divorced. But there's lots of divorce lawyers out there making lots and lots of money. So it does happen. So a declaration of trust is a great way to set those boundaries from the start. Not only does it make it easier when that time comes, but in some ways, that time may come quicker because actually everyone knows where we're at. It stops a lot of animosity and it saves a lot of fees further down the line where everyone's arguing over what they can or what they can't do. So definitely, I would say anyone, if there's one person's a bit more in than the other, whether it's a friendship, anything like that, declaration of trust is written up by your solicitor. It's 125 quid plus VAT. And it just sets those boundaries nice and clear from the off.
Yeah, I'm pleased we covered that over, because I said that is happening more and more. And I've known lots of people that have rented properties together that have thought, actually, do you know what? if we all chuck another £100 in a month, we could actually buy a property where it's our own, and we can, get a foot on the ladder, all those sorts of things. That again, it will help with your credit rating, your credit ladder, all those sorts of things. If you're on the electoral roll in your home owner, rather than renting, where it's difficult to prove your payments out on a rental format. So moving ahead. So that's why I asked that. The other thing I would just add there as well is, when you've got this agreement put together, you need to almost look at it as a business transaction and review it regularly. So sit down every year and review the situation. Has somebody been putting in more for the bills, or has there been repairs on the house that somebody's then had to cough up that you weren't expecting? Look at that equity split share that you've talked about before. Look at the capital growth on the property, and also have an exit strategy. Like you've said, is if rather than that divorce, separation, however you want to class it, there will be a time, like Jenny says, is that your routes are going to go down different avenues, and it's good to have a plan for that exit strategy as well, and just review it on a regular basis. So that will be the other point that I put in there as well. The other thing that I was going to talk about, Jenny, and I sort of said that I can sort of summarize a little bit, is hindsight's always a great thing. And when you're a first-time buyer, trust me, you're going to have some sleepless nights. Okay, you're going to be worried, thinking, "Oh my God, what have we done?" All that excitement when you first find a property, get the offer accepted, you got your mortgage through, you exchange contracts, you pick up the keys. Month 2, month 3, you think, "Oh God, the bills are coming in, and we've got to pay for this and all these other responsibilities, etc." So hindsight's always one of these things. Is that's why I said about setting a budget that's realistic, so you still have a life, so it doesn't become a noose around your neck. But it's one of these things as well. Is we've all been there. It's always a worry when you take on these things, and it is a big commitment. My view would always be is you'll always look back and think, "God, it seems so much cheaper in those days than what it is now." And house prices have always gone up over a short, medium, and long period. It will dip down every now and then. But if you look at the prices in Lincoln over the last 5, 10, 15 years, I did a video with somebody today, an investor, talking about what's happened in Lincoln prices, about capital growth, and we're doing an educational video there, and we were looking at, on average, Lincoln prices have gone up between 3 and 5% year on year on year on year on year. And we were talking about properties sort of Monks Road and West End area, which went from 40 grand to 80 grand. And I remember when the first property in that location sold over 100 grand, and we all went, "Wow, a property in Lincoln, in that location sold for over 100 grand." You're not going to get anything, southwards of nearly 200,000 in that location now. So it is something that you need to think again about, this plan of how long do you envisage yourself staying there for? You might have life situations which mean that those changes happen quicker. But usually it's at a point where your capital growth has, and what we mean by that is where you buy at a certain price, your mortgage payments mean that loan and debt comes down, but the value of the property goes up. So this gap in between, the bigger that gap, the better, because again, you've got more equity in what we call capital growth in the value of the property, just to explain that. And I'm hoping I did that quite like Martin Lewis.
Yeah, I like that.
That's good. So you want to maximize that, and when you get to a point you think, actually, unless we start spending some money on the property, we've probably capped at the cap of the actual market value. So what happens here, it stabilizes here, and each month you're paying a little bit more off, you grow it that way. Whereas what you really want is the housing market to grow up like this faster. Okay, so but you'll get to a point where this slows down, and that's often a trigger to say, actually, now do we take the money from the property and move on to the next place? So I always just add that there, that it is daunting. Keep it realistic, but don't lose too much sleep. Don't be worried about it too much, because again, you'll look back and you'll think, what was I worrying about? You just got to get on with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you're right there, Mike. There's always life events that happen, but then there's points in your life where you just hit that ceiling point and you think, let's take that money. This is the right time for us now to move and take advantage. And what I see a lot, especially now, and people disagree with doing this, but sometimes actually moving home to a bigger house and taking some of that equity out, and repaying maybe debts or car loans and all of that sort of stuff can put you in a better position financially. So I think we've said about the hangover from COVID before, we're seeing more and more people thinking, actually, if I can take this little bit of equity that we've earned out, I'm going to clear all of this and I get to move to my next level home, and we get that one manageable payment. And we're seeing a lot of that in the market at the moment, which again is allowing the first time buyers to get on, and it's moving that ladder forward for everyone.
Yeah, fantastic. Just trying to think, is there anything else that we need to cover from first time buyer? I think in a minute, say, go on, say, Jenny, go.
I was just going to say, one of the things that is a big bit of a passion for me, and I always have a conversation with people, is overpayments. Now, everyone tells me they're going to overpay, yes. And very few people do overpay, but they're all going to overpay. They tell me, I'm going to overpay, Jen, I'm going to overpay. And I always do a calculation of what £50, £100 overpayment can cause you, but can give you. What I would say is, as a first-time buyer, your first year is all about getting you in the home. You are going to probably rack up a little bit of debt, maybe on some credit cards, or you're going to reduce those savings, because there's no one, and Mike, I'm sure you can vouch for this, that will move into their home and go, I put my bags down, I put my furniture down, and I'm doing no work to it. Whether it's decoration, carpets, absolutely. There is always that money. And I think that's one thing first-time buyers forget. They think, well, I paid my solicitors, paid my broker, paid the lender, paid my first payment, and then they're like, where's all my money to buy that sofa or do that decoration that I want? And we want to try and avoid that. So the first year, there's always a little bit of debt that's built up. Second year is usually trying to get rid of that debt. Third year, really consider the overpayments towards your mortgage. If you can do it sooner, perfect. But reality is, it's usually the third year where you kind of have a bit more free money that you can make those overpayments. And I promise you, a small overpayment will save you thousands of pounds of interest, and it will get you mortgage free quicker, which is, let's be fair, everyone gets the mortgage as soon as they've got it, Mike. All they're looking to do is, right, how can I get that repaid? How can I get that gone? Yeah. So, you know, a massive thing for any mortgage broker is overpayments. If you're able to, then definitely consider putting that extra money each month towards your mortgage.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've covered a lot there in that half an hour. As I say, if you've any questions at all, do make sure you reach out to us. Again, appreciate everybody been watching tonight. Again, if you're watching this back on one of our previous shows and you want to have a look back through the old catalogues again, if you go back over to all of our social media, all of the shows are on there each week that you can have a look back on as well. I'd like to suggest a topic for next week.
Okay, I'm going to write this down because we will forget.
We will forget. Go for it. Is that I'm getting a lot of people asking me about, if a chain falls through, what happens next? So there's a couple of situations, particularly where if you're in that situation, you've had an offer. I touched on it last week that 42% of property sales at the moment in the UK are falling through throughout that negotiation period before you've exchanged contracts. So I'm going to give you some helpful hints on, first of all, how to protect yourself as best you can to avoid that. And I'm going to give you some really interesting statistics in regards to price reduced properties that then their sale falls through, which I think will be an eye opener for everybody. But also that if it does happen, what key things can you and your estate agent do to get the property resold again? So if that's okay, Jenny, we'll have a look at that for next week, because that'll also involve,
that's a good one.
Yeah, a good bit as well from your point in regard to where you are at with the mortgage application, mortgage offers and things, which is something we spoke about a couple of weeks ago as well. So great, let's roll the end credits this evening. As I say, thanks for watching. Make sure you drop us a like as well, and we very much look forward to meeting with you again, same time, same place, next Tuesday. In the meantime, have a great bank holiday weekend, whatever you're up to, you and your families and your friends. Have a great few days, and hopefully you get a bit of a rest up as well if you're not working. But we'll see you all again this time next week.
Oh, they're not working. Hang on, here we go.